You hear a lot about global warming now. Well, that's just one part of a much larger scientific movement that started in 1968. In 1968, some scientists started figuring out ways to use the big new computers they had to study the whole Earth's environment at once. That's what led to the discovery of global warming. Well, another part of that scientific movement has been human psychology. Part of that human psychology movement has been the study of how human decision-making affects the environment. Basically, global warming is a gigantic mistake humanity has made because our education level doesn't match our technological level. We thought it did, but we were wrong. So, solving the problem depends on a better education system. So another part of the human psychology movement has been to figure out how people learn so that we can get the education we need. The scientists have been looking for the connections between different fields of study so we can find a central body of information that each field of study is a different branch of. To make our education level match our technological level, we don't need to think harder, we need to think more powerfully. A body of information that would tie everyone's high school classes together would also be a body of information people could use to sort out their relationships with their boyfriends or girlfriends and their parents, and that they could use to graduate from medical school or engineering school or whatever. A big part of the psychology movement has been to build up to psychology from human biology, so it will be an approach to psychology that will be universal to everyone. So that makes this the science of how we're all the same and why we're different. The scientists who have been working on this part have made gigantic discoveries about history, culture, language, religion, emotions, communication, gender differences, and child development. So, for anyone who's struggling against racism or discrimination of any kind, if everyone was to learn this in public school, that would go a long way towards solving the problem. But if they don't teach it in public school, you can still learn it on your own. Solving any kind of a problem that affects society depends on people working together. There are a lot of different problems we face in America. One of them is racism, another is global warming, and then there's the war and the recession. And all of these problems connect to each other. You can't solve one without solving all the rest. There's plenty of people who are trying to solve each of them. There's a huge demand for people who even understand the whole situation. Which means if you get a good enough education to stop racist immigration policies in America, you'll be able to use the same education to help solve all the rest of the problems. People who don't know how to feed their families this week don't really care about global warming. A solution to global warming depends on global cooperation, and racism isn't global cooperation. That's why step number one in learning how to cooperate with people to solve problems is learning how to use your education to cooperate with people who don't have as good of an education as you do. There are lots of people all over the world who are trying to work together. They're talking to each other and telling their stories about what things are like wherever they are because that's what they know about. A core education that could connect all your classes together would also connect all those people's stories together. It doesn't matter if the people who are telling the stories don't know how all their stories fit together. If you have the education, you can recognize the same patterns showing up in everyone's stories. There's no reason the other people couldn't get the education, but it doesn't matter that they don't have it now. In the same way, you don't need to be a doctor to go to the hospital. If you feel sick, you go to the hospital to see someone who has the education he needs to look at your symptoms and be able to tell what's wrong with you. One purpose of this video is to show you how to get the education with just 5 books. This is the story of how the 5 critical discoveries that make the unification of education were made, and the story of what the scientists discovered. The other purpose of this video is to show you how you can use that education to interpret the stories that people are telling, so that all their stories fit together to tell one giant story of the world.